My name is James and I'm 42 years old. Until 3 months ago, I thought I had a perfect marriage with my wife Lisa. We'd been together for 12 years, married for 8 of those, and I believed we were as happy as any couple could reasonably expect to be. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our shared dreams of maybe starting a family soon. I was completely, utterly wrong about everything. The day I caught Lisa cheating was a Tuesday in September, and it started like any other day. I had a client meeting in downtown that got cancelled at the last minute due to a family emergency on their end. Instead of calling Lisa to let her know I'd be home early, I decided to surprise her. Maybe we could grab lunch together, or just spend some unexpected time in each other's company. I pulled into our driveway at 11:30 a.m., noting that Lisa's car was there alongside another vehicle I didn't recognize, a black sedan with out-of-state plates. I figured it might be someone from her real estate office, as Lisa often had clients over to review contracts or discuss property details. She worked from home twice a week, and I'd grown accustomed to occasionally finding strangers in our living room looking at property listings. I used my key to enter through the front door, calling out, "Honey, I'm home early," as I always did. But instead of Lisa's usual cheerful response, I heard something that made my blood freeze, her voice but not speaking to me. She was upstairs and she was making sounds I recognized but had never heard directed at anyone but me. My first instinct was denial. Maybe she was watching a movie or on a video call with a friend discussing something inappropriate. But as I stood in our foyer, listening to the unmistakable sounds coming from our bedroom, I knew exactly what was happening. Lisa was with someone else, in our bed, in our house, in the middle of what I had always assumed was our faithful marriage. I should have turned around and left. I should have given myself time to process what I was hearing before confronting the situation. Instead, I found myself climbing the stairs, each step feeling like it took an eternity. The sounds grew clearer as I approached our bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. What I saw through that crack in the door changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Lisa was with a woman. Not just any woman, but someone I recognized, Dr. Amanda Clark, Lisa's gynecologist. A woman we'd had dinner with socially on several occasions, along with her husband Dr. Richard Clark. A woman who had examined Lisa medically, who had been in our home as a friend, who I'd never suspected of harboring any romantic feelings toward my wife. They were so absorbed in each other that neither noticed me standing in the hallway. I watched for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds, trying to process what I was seeing. I backed away from the door quietly, my mind reeling. I walked downstairs in a daze, sat on our couch and tried to figure out what I was supposed to do next. Part of me wanted to storm back upstairs and demand an explanation. Part of me wanted to leave the house and pretend I'd never seen anything. But mostly I just felt confused. Lisa was having an affair, but not the kind of affair I would have ever imagined. This wasn't about her falling for another man or about problems in our physical relationship, or about her feeling neglected or unappreciated. This was about her discovering or exploring a part of herself that apparently had nothing to do with me at all. 20 minutes later, I heard Dr. Clark coming down the stairs. I positioned myself so I could see the front door without being seen, and watched as she kissed Lisa goodbye, not a casual peck, but a deep, lingering kiss that spoke of genuine affection. After she left, Lisa went back upstairs, presumably to shower and change the sheets. I sat in my car in the driveway for another hour, trying to decide how to handle the situation. When I finally went back inside, Lisa was in the kitchen making lunch, humming softly to herself. She looked happier and more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. "Hey babe," she said when she saw me. "How was your meeting?" "It got cancelled," I said, watching her face carefully. "Client emergency." "Oh, that's too bad." "Well, at least you get to have lunch at home today." "I was just making sandwiches." She seemed completely normal, showing no signs of guilt or nervousness. If I hadn't witnessed what I'd witnessed, I never would have suspected anything. Lisa had apparently become quite skilled at compartmentalizing her life. For the next 2 weeks I said nothing. Instead, I watched Lisa with new eyes, looking for signs I'd previously missed. And once I knew what to look for, they were everywhere. The way Lisa's eyes lit up whenever Dr. Clark was mentioned in conversation. How Lisa always volunteered to handle anything related to Dr. Clark's family when they needed help with something. The fact that Lisa had recently started going to yoga classes on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, the same times Dr. Clark had mentioned being free during our social dinners. Lisa had also been more attentive to her appearance lately, something I'd attributed to her wanting to look good for her real estate clients. Now I realized she was dressing for someone else entirely. She'd started wearing perfume during the day, even when she wasn't leaving the house. The hardest part was realizing how long this had probably been going on. Dr. Clark had been Lisa's gynecologist for 3 years. They'd met socially about 2 years ago. Lisa had started her yoga classes 8 months ago. Her behavior changes, which I'd attributed to natural evolution and growth, had been happening gradually over the past year. I also started noticing things about Dr. Clark that I'd previously overlooked. The way she looked at Lisa during dinner parties, paying just a little too much attention to everything my wife said. How she always found reasons to touch Lisa's arm or shoulder during conversation. The fact that she'd recommended Lisa switch to a different birth control method 6 months ago, claiming it would be better for her overall health. The birth control change now seemed particularly significant. If Lisa was having an affair with a woman, she wouldn't need to worry about pregnancy, but she might want to change medications for other reasons, perhaps to align her cycle with someone else's, or to address side effects that might interfere with her new relationship. After 2 weeks of observation and analysis, I realized I needed to confront Lisa directly. But I also realized that this conversation would be unlike any discussion of infidelity I'd ever imagined having. This wasn't about Lisa choosing another man over me, or about our marriage lacking something she'd found elsewhere. This was about Lisa possibly discovering that she was attracted to women, or at least to one particular woman, in a way that she'd never explored before. I planned the conversation carefully, waiting for a weekend when we had no social obligations and plenty of time to talk things through. On Saturday morning, I made coffee for both of us and asked Lisa to sit with me in our living room. "Lisa," I began, "I need to ask you about something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Something in my tone must have alerted her because her expression immediately became guarded. "Okay," she said carefully. "What is it? Are you having an affair?" The coffee mug slipped from her hands, falling onto our carpet and spreading a brown stain across the white fabric. Lisa stared at the spill for a moment, then looked up at me with tears already forming in her eyes. "How did you find out?" she asked quietly. "I came home early 2 weeks ago. I saw you with Dr. Clark." Lisa's face crumpled and she started crying in earnest. "James, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant for you to find out like this." What followed was the most difficult and enlightening conversation of my marriage. Lisa told me everything starting from the beginning. Her relationship with Dr. Clark had begun professionally, but had gradually evolved into friendship during Lisa's routine appointments. Dr. Clark had been going through difficulties in her marriage to Dr. Richard Clark, and had confided in Lisa about feeling unfulfilled and uncertain about her future. "She was so sad," Lisa explained, "and so intelligent and so beautiful. I found myself looking forward to my appointments, not because I enjoyed the medical aspect, but because I enjoyed talking with her. At first I thought I just admired her. She's accomplished and confident in ways I've always wished I could be." Their friendship had developed slowly. Coffee after appointments had turned into longer conversations about their respective marriages, their career goals, their disappointments and dreams. Lisa found herself thinking about Dr. Clark frequently, missing her between their meetings, looking for excuses to call or text her. "I didn't understand what was happening," Lisa said. "I'd never been attracted to a woman before. I'd never questioned my sexuality or felt like anything was missing from our relationship. But with Amanda, I started feeling things I'd never felt before, or maybe things I'd felt but never recognized or acknowledged." The physical aspect of their relationship had begun 6 months ago, during what was supposed to be a casual lunch meeting. Dr. Clark had been particularly upset about her marriage that day, and Lisa had tried to comfort her with a hug that had turned into something more. "I know how cliché this sounds," Lisa said, "but it felt so natural and so right. Like something I'd been waiting my whole life to experience without even knowing I was waiting for it." They'd been meeting twice a week since then, usually at Dr. Clark's apartment during times when her husband was at the hospital. Sometimes they spent the time talking, sometimes they were intimate, sometimes they just enjoyed each other's company in ways that Lisa found deeply fulfilling. "Do you love her?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I was prepared for the answer. "Yes," Lisa said without hesitation. "I do love her. But James, I love you too. That's what makes this so complicated and so terrible. I'm not falling out of love with you. I'm not unhappy in our marriage. I'm just discovering parts of myself that I never knew existed." Over the next several hours, Lisa helped me understand what she'd been experiencing. She described it not as dissatisfaction with our relationship, but as awakening to possibilities she'd never previously considered. She compared it to suddenly discovering you enjoy a type of music you'd never listened to. It doesn't mean you stop loving the music you've always enjoyed, but it expands your understanding of what music can be. "I know that's a terrible analogy," she said, "because music isn't marriage and discovering new music doesn't hurt anyone. but I don't know how else to explain it. Being with Amanda doesn't make me love you less, but it does make me understand myself differently. I asked Lisa whether she'd always been attracted to women but had suppressed those feelings, or whether this was truly new territory for her. She said she honestly didn't know. Looking back, there were probably signs, she admitted. Female friends I was particularly drawn to, actresses I found more interesting than I could explain, moments when I felt attracted to women but dismissed those feelings as admiration or friendship. But I was raised to assume I was heterosexual, and I never questioned that assumption because my relationship with you has always been genuinely happy and fulfilling. We talked about Dr. Clark's marriage and whether she was planning to leave her husband. Lisa said Amanda was struggling with the same questions about her own identity and future that Lisa was facing. She's known she was attracted to women longer than I have, Lisa explained. She married Richard because she thought she should, because it was expected, because she wasn't ready to accept other possibilities for herself. But she's never been truly happy in her marriage, and being with me has helped her understand why. I asked the question that had been bothering me most, whether Lisa wanted to end our marriage to be with Dr. Clark. I don't know, Lisa said, and her honesty was both refreshing and terrifying. I know that's not what you want to hear, but I can't give you a definitive answer right now. I love Amanda and I love what we have together, but I also love you and I love what we've built together. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to honor both relationships, or if I'm going to have to choose. The conversation continued over several days, with both of us trying to understand not just what had happened, but what we wanted to happen next. Lisa was dealing with questions about her sexual identity that she'd never had to confront before. I was dealing with the reality that my wife had fallen in love with someone who could offer her things I never could, simply by virtue of being a woman. But there were other complications beyond the obvious ones. Dr. Clark was still married, still maintaining her professional practice, still living a public life that would be significantly complicated by coming out as lesbian or bisexual. Lisa worked in real estate in a conservative area where her career might be affected by her personal life becoming public knowledge. Both women were dealing with families and social circles that might not be accepting of their relationship. Dr. Clark had teenage children who would be affected by their parents' divorce, especially if that divorce was followed by their mother entering a relationship with another woman. Lisa had parents and siblings who had always assumed she was heterosexual and happily married. 2 weeks after our initial conversation, Lisa asked if I would be willing to meet with Dr. Clark to discuss the situation together. My first instinct was to refuse. I had no desire to sit down with the woman who had been sleeping with my wife. But I also realized that avoidance wouldn't help any of us figure out how to move forward. We met at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant in a neighboring town where we were unlikely to encounter anyone we knew. Dr. Clark looked as uncomfortable as I felt, but she was direct and honest in a way I appreciated. "James," she said, "I want you to know that I never intended for this to happen. I've been struggling with my own identity for years, and meeting Lisa helped me understand things about myself that I'd been avoiding. But I never wanted to hurt you or destroy your marriage. Yet here we are," I replied, not entirely able to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Yes, here we are," she agreed. "And now we need to figure out how to handle this situation in a way that's honest and fair to everyone involved." Dr. Clark explained that she was planning to separate from her husband regardless of what happened with Lisa. Her marriage had been troubled for years, and her relationship with Lisa had simply clarified for her that she wasn't capable of being the wife her husband deserved. "I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not," she said. "It's not fair to Richard and it's not sustainable for me. Whether or not Lisa and I end up together long term, I need to end my marriage and start living authentically." She also acknowledged that her relationship with Lisa put both of them in a difficult position professionally and socially. As a doctor, she was concerned about how her personal life might affect her medical practice. As someone who had been living as a heterosexual woman for over 20 years, she was nervous about the process of coming out to her family and friends. "But I can't go back to hiding," she said. "Being with Lisa has shown me what it feels like to be genuinely happy and fulfilled in a romantic relationship. I can't unknow that feeling." Over the course of our conversation, I began to understand that this situation was more complex than a simple case of infidelity. Lisa wasn't leaving me for another person so much as she was potentially leaving heterosexual marriage for a completely different way of living and loving. Dr. Clark wasn't stealing my wife so much as she was helping my wife discover parts of herself that had always existed but had never been acknowledged. That didn't make the situation less painful, but it did make it less personal in some ways. Lisa's feelings for Dr. Clark weren't a commentary on my inadequacies as a husband. They were an expression of aspects of her identity that had nothing to do with me at all. After that meeting, the three of us began what can only be described as the most unusual divorce negotiation in history. We met weekly for 2 months, sometimes all together, sometimes in pairs, working through the practical and emotional aspects of dissolving my marriage and Dr. Clark's marriage while allowing Lisa and Dr. Clark to explore their relationship openly. It was emotionally exhausting but also oddly healing. Instead of anger and recrimination, we focused on honesty and mutual respect. Instead of fighting over possessions and property, we worked together to ensure that everyone's needs were met as fairly as possible. Dr. Clark's divorce was more complicated than ours, involving children and a more complex financial situation. Her husband Richard was devastated, not just by the end of his marriage but by the realization that his wife had been struggling with her sexual identity throughout their entire relationship. He felt deceived, but also confused about whether Amanda had been lying to him or lying to herself. "I keep wondering if there were signs I should have noticed," he told me during one of our conversations. Looking back, there were probably clues that Amanda wasn't entirely happy in our marriage, but I attributed them to work stress or normal relationship fluctuations. I never imagined that she might be gay or bisexual. Richard and I became unlikely allies in the process, two men trying to understand how our wives had fallen in love with each other while remaining in some ways in love with us as well. It was a situation neither of us had any experience navigating, and we found comfort in being able to discuss our confusion and hurt with someone who was going through something similar. The most surprising aspect of the entire situation was how supportive our families and friends ultimately were, once they understood what was happening. Lisa's parents were initially shocked, but they rallied around their daughter once they realized she was going through a genuine identity crisis rather than simply having an affair. "We just want you to be happy," Lisa's mother told her. "If being with Amanda makes you happy in a way that being married to James doesn't, then we support that decision." My own family was more skeptical, particularly my traditional parents who couldn't understand how a marriage could end because one spouse discovered they were attracted to someone of the same gender. But even they eventually came to accept that Lisa's feelings were genuine and that forcing her to stay in a marriage that no longer fit her authentic self wouldn't benefit anyone. Dr. Clark's children struggled more with the situation, particularly her teenage daughter who felt embarrassed about her mother's sexuality being discussed in their social circle. But her son was surprisingly mature about the entire situation. "I always wondered why Mom seemed sad sometimes even when everything was going well," he told Dr. Clark. "If being with Lisa makes her actually happy, then I guess I'm glad she figured that out, even if it means our family is changing." 6 months after I first caught Lisa with Dr. Clark, both divorces were finalized. Lisa moved into Dr. Clark's apartment, and they began living together openly. I moved into a smaller place across town and began the process of rebuilding my life as a single man. The transition was harder than I expected, not because I was still angry or hurt, but because I was genuinely lonely. Lisa had been my closest friend as well as my wife, and losing that daily companionship left a void that was difficult to fill. I started therapy to help me process not just the end of my marriage, but also my feelings about discovering that my wife was gay or bisexual. "Do you feel like your entire marriage was a lie?" my therapist asked during one of our sessions. "No," I realized as I answered. Lisa's feelings for me were real. Our happiness together was real. The life we built was real. It just wasn't sustainable once Lisa understood more about herself. And I think if she had tried to suppress her feelings for Amanda and stay married to me, we both would have been miserable eventually. That realization helped me move forward without bitterness. Lisa hadn't deceived me maliciously or chosen to hurt me deliberately. She'd simply discovered something about herself that changed what she needed from a romantic relationship. A year later, I'm in a much better place emotionally. I've started dating again, something I never thought I'd be doing at 43. I've also developed a better understanding of my own needs and desires, having been forced to examine what I want from a partner and a relationship. Lisa and Dr. Clark are still together, and they seem genuinely happy. They've both come out to their professional communities and have faced some challenges, but they've also found more support than they expected. Dr. Clark's medical practice has actually grown, as she's become known as a physician who is particularly sensitive to LGBTQ health issues. They invited me to their commitment ceremony last month, and I surprised myself by attending. It was a small gathering of close friends and family, held in the backyard of Dr. Clark's apartment complex. Watching Lisa exchange vows with Dr. Clark was emotional, but not in the way I expected. Instead of feeling jealous or bitter, I felt genuinely happy for them. Lisa looked more radiant and authentic than I'd ever seen her. Dr. Clark seemed peaceful and confident in a way she never had during the years when she was suppressing her true self. They were clearly meant to be together, and seeing them together helped me understand that our divorce hadn't been about failure, it had been about everyone finding their way to more honest and fulfilling lives. Richard also attended the ceremony, bringing his teenage children. His presence there surprised everyone, including Dr. Clark, but he explained it simply: Amanda was a good friend before she was my wife, and she's still a good friend now. I want her to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. That level of maturity and generosity inspired me to examine my own feelings and motivations. Was I attending Lisa's commitment ceremony because I was genuinely happy for her, or because I was trying to prove something about my own emotional growth? I concluded that it was probably both, and that both motivations were valid. The ceremony was beautiful and moving, filled with readings about love transcending conventional boundaries and promises about supporting each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. Lisa's vows to Dr. Clark were honest about the complexity of their situation and the courage it had taken for both of them to choose authenticity over convenience. Amanda helped me discover who I really am, Lisa said during her vows, and I promise to spend the rest of my life supporting her in being who she really is. We've both learned that love isn't always simple or conventional, but it's always worth pursuing when it's real. Dr. Clark's vows focused on gratitude for Lisa's patience during her coming out process, gratitude for the support of their families and friends, and gratitude for the opportunity to live openly and honestly after years of hiding parts of herself. I spent too many years being afraid of who I might be, she said. Lisa taught me that being authentic is scarier than being safe, but it's also infinitely more rewarding. I promise to never again hide the parts of myself that make me who I am. After the ceremony, I had a chance to talk privately with both Lisa and Dr. Clark. Lisa thanked me for being understanding about the situation and for not making the divorce process more difficult than it needed to be. I know this couldn't have been easy for you, she said. I know that finding out your wife is attracted to women must have been confusing and hurtful in ways I can't fully understand. Thank you for giving me the space to figure out who I am and what I need. Thank you for being honest, I replied. Eventually. I'm glad you didn't spend the rest of your life pretending to be someone you're not for my sake. That wouldn't have been fair to either of us. Dr. Clark also approached me during the reception. James, I want you to know that I've always felt terrible about the way this situation developed. I never meant to fall in love with Lisa, and I certainly never meant to contribute to the end of your marriage. I know, I said. And I also know that sometimes people can't control who they fall in love with. I'm glad you and Lisa found each other, even if the timing and circumstances were complicated. Now, 18 months after that Tuesday when I came home early and discovered my wife in bed with another woman, I can honestly say that I'm grateful for how everything worked out. Not grateful for the pain and confusion of the divorce process, but grateful that Lisa found the courage to live authentically and grateful that I was forced to examine my own life and priorities. I'm dating someone new now, a woman named Sarah who is divorced and has 2 young children. Our relationship is different from what I had with Lisa, partly because I'm older and more experienced, but mostly because both Sarah and I are coming into the relationship with a clearer understanding of who we are and what we need from a partner. Sarah knows the whole story of my marriage to Lisa, and she's been remarkably understanding about the unusual circumstances of our divorce. It sounds like Lisa needed to explore a part of herself that she'd never acknowledged, Sarah said when I first explained the situation. I'm glad she found the courage to do that, and I'm glad you found the grace to support her through it. Lisa and I still talk occasionally, usually about practical matters related to our shared history, but sometimes just as friends checking in on each other's lives. She asks about my relationship with Sarah, and I ask about her life with Dr. Clark. There's no romantic tension or unresolved feelings, but there is genuine care and concern for each other's well-being. Do you ever regret marrying me? I asked her during one of our conversations. Never, she said without hesitation. Our marriage was exactly what I needed at that time in my life. You helped me become the person who was eventually brave enough to acknowledge other parts of herself. I learned how to be a good partner by being married to you, and I use those skills in my relationship with Amanda every day. Do you ever regret not figuring out your sexuality sooner? Sometimes, she admitted. I wonder what would have happened if I'd understood myself better when I was younger. But I also think everything happened when it was supposed to happen. I needed to experience a loving marriage with a man before I could understand what I was missing in my relationships with women. That conversation helped me understand that our marriage hadn't been a mistake or a waste of time. It had been a necessary part of Lisa's journey toward self-discovery, just as our divorce had been a necessary part of my own growth and development. Looking back, I can see signs that Lisa was struggling with her identity throughout our marriage, but they were subtle signs that would have been easy to miss or misinterpret. She was never dishonest with me about her feelings, she was simply unaware of them herself until she met Dr. Clark and experienced attraction and connection that she'd never felt before. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that people can change and grow in ways that fundamentally alter their needs and desires, even after years of marriage. That doesn't mean the marriage was fake or meaningless, but it does mean that sometimes love isn't enough to sustain a relationship if the people in that relationship are evolving in incompatible directions. I also learned that supporting someone through a major life transition, even when that transition ends your relationship with them, can be one of the most generous and meaningful things you can do for another person. Lisa needed my understanding and cooperation to explore her authentic self, and giving her that gift ultimately benefited all of us. The day I caught Lisa cheating was the beginning of the most difficult year of my life, but it was also the beginning of a more honest and fulfilling chapter for everyone involved. Sometimes the most devastating discoveries lead to the most important growth, both individually and collectively. I never would have chosen to discover my wife's infidelity by walking in on her with another woman, but I can't regret the journey that discovery set in motion. Lisa is happier and more authentic than she ever was during our marriage. Dr. Clark is living openly and honestly for the first time in her adult life. And I've learned things about love, identity, and resilience that have made me a better partner and a stronger person. The black sedan with out-of-state plates that was parked in our driveway that Tuesday morning belonged to a woman who would ultimately help my wife discover her true self. At the time, that car represented betrayal and deception. Now, it represents courage and authenticity and the sometimes painful process of becoming who we're really meant to be. Thank you for listening to my story. If you had a similar experience, share it in the comments. And also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.